In the spring of 1962, a steelworker's wife named Dorothy Kessler stood at her kitchen sink in Youngstown, Ohio, with a bottle of white vinegar in one hand and yesterday's newspaper crumpled in the other. She was cleaning windows. She had been cleaning windows this way since her mother taught her, who learned it from hers. The windows came out clear and streak-free every time. It cost her 15 cents for enough vinegar to do the whole house. That same year, Windex spent $2 million on television advertising. Dorothy did not switch. She did not need to. Here is something the cleaning industry has never been comfortable saying out loud. In 1950, the average American household spent roughly $2 a month on cleaning products. By 1970, that number had climbed to $11. By 2023, Americans spent more than $30 billion a year on household cleaners combined. None of that growth happened because American homes got dirtier. It happened because someone spent enormous amounts of money convincing people that what they were already doing, effectively, cheaply, and safely, simply was not good enough anymore. The tricks that follow were in every American home before the stores decided you needed something else. Some of them are so simple they will make you laugh. A few of them will make you genuinely angry when you see what replaced them. And one of them was confirmed by university researchers in 2019 to outperform the commercial product that spent 40 years trying to take its place. Dorothy already knew that. She just did not have a study to wave at anyone. The first trick was a yellow box with a red logo that had not changed since 1846. Arm and Hammer baking soda. Your grandmother kept 3 of them, one in the refrigerator, one under the sink, one beside the stove, not because the box told her to, but because the box went everywhere a problem needed solving. Here is what almost nobody remembers. She did not use it the way the advertising suggested. She used it the way it actually worked. Sprinkled on a damp cloth, it scrubbed the stovetop without scratching the enamel, something the spray cleaners of the 1960s could not promise. Made into a thick paste with water, it sat overnight on the burned bottom of a cast-iron pan and lifted every trace of char by morning, without chemical fumes, without rubber gloves, without opening a window in January. Rubbed on the grout between kitchen tiles with an old toothbrush, it whitened without bleaching the color out of anything around it. A box of Arm & Hammer in 1962 cost 8 cents. The specialty oven cleaner that eventually replaced it for that one job costs $6 today and requires protective gloves and ventilation. Your grandmother used a bowl of water and a cloth and slept through the night while the paste did the work. The box worked. The marketing worked harder. The second trick was that bottle of white vinegar and yesterday's newspaper, and together they cleaned glass better than anything with a spray nozzle and a chemical formula ever has. The newspaper is the part that sounds wrong until you understand why it works. Paper towels leave lint on glass. Microfiber cloths leave a fine streak. Newspaper leaves neither, because old newsprint had no loose fibers, and the ink acted as a very mild polishing agent against the glass surface. Crumple the paper into a loose ball. The crumpling matters. It creates edges that lift dirt rather than pushing it sideways. Spray the window with equal parts white vinegar and water. Wipe in circles. Step back. A bottle of white vinegar in 1965 cost 15 cents and cleaned every window in a 4-bedroom house. A bottle of Windex today costs $5, leaves a faint chemical smell that the vinegar never did, and instructs you to use paper towels, which leave lint. Dorothy's windows were clearer. The third trick was for the oven, and it required nothing more than the salt box that already sat on the stove. When something boiled over in a hot oven, your grandmother poured a generous layer of Morton salt directly onto the spill while the oven was still at temperature. The salt drew the heat away from the burning food and absorbed its moisture before it could carbonize and fuse itself permanently to the oven floor. When the oven cooled, she swept it out with a brush. The spill came with it, loose and clean. Here is the science that explains why this worked. Salt has a higher heat capacity than most food residues, meaning it pulls thermal energy away from the spill faster than the oven surface can supply it. The spill dries out rather than cooking further into the porcelain. A box of Morton salt in 1960 cost 12 cents and sat exactly where it needed to be. Easy Off Oven Cleaner, which was pushed heavily through the 1960s and 70s in television commercials featuring women in aprons looking relieved, contains sodium hydroxide, lye, which causes chemical burns on skin contact and requires the oven to ventilate for hours after use. A can costs $6 today. Your grandmother poured table salt on a spill and swept it up in the morning. That was the entire recipe. The fourth trick was a white candle stub in the junk drawer. Not for power outages, for stuck drawers. Every house had at least one. A kitchen cabinet that swelled with summer humidity and fought you every morning. A bathroom vanity that jammed when you were already running late. Your grandfather did not call a carpenter, and he did not reach for the WD-40. He rubbed a candle stub, the remains of last Christmas or the last birthday dinner, hard along the wooden runners of the stuck drawer, both sides, full length, 3 firm passes. The paraffin wax worked into the wood grain. The drawer slid quietly on the second try. The fix held for 6 months, sometimes longer. Here is what WD-40 does that paraffin does not. It evaporates. The lubricating carrier fluid in WD-40 is designed to displace water and penetrate rust, not to stay in place. Within weeks, it has largely gone, and the drawer needs another application. It also attracts dust, which over time creates a sticky residue in the very channel it was meant to smooth. Paraffin does none of those things. It stays where you put it, repels moisture, and costs nothing, because it is the end of a candle you were going to throw away, a candle stub. That was the whole repair. The fifth trick was the copper penny in the vase. When cut flowers came in from the garden or arrived wrapped in paper from the grocery, your grandmother filled the vase with water and dropped in 1 copper penny from her apron pocket. The flowers lasted several days longer than they would have otherwise. Here is what was happening. Copper has mild antimicrobial properties. It interferes with the enzyme processes of bacteria and certain fungi at the molecular level. The bacteria that multiply in vase water are what cause cut flower stems to deteriorate so quickly, cutting off the flow of water up the stem and collapsing the bloom from below. A small amount of copper released by the coin slowed that bacterial growth without harming the flower. University studies published in the 1990s confirmed what your grandmother learned from hers. Copper in vase water measurably extends cut flower life. Today, floral preservative packets cost between 50 cents and $1 each, contain copper sulfate among other compounds, and come in the small paper envelope the florist tucks in with the bouquet. Your grandmother's solution was already in her pocket and cost nothing. The flowers looked exactly as good. The sixth trick was half a cup of white vinegar in the washing machine, not in the drum with the clothes, in the fabric softener compartment, every load. Here is what commercial fabric softener actually does that nobody in the advertising explains. It coats fabric fibers with a synthetic lubricant that makes them feel soft to the touch, but reduces their ability to absorb water. Towels washed repeatedly with liquid fabric softener become progressively less effective at drying you off. The fibers that feel silkier in your hand are the same fibers that slide water across the surface instead of pulling it in. Your grandmother understood this intuitively because she watched her towels stay absorbent for years, while the neighbor who switched to the new fabric softener complained that her towels felt like chamois leather after 6 months. White vinegar in the softener compartment strips away the soap residue that makes fabric feel stiff without coating anything. The clothes come out genuinely soft, the kind of soft that happens when the fiber is clean all the way through, not the kind that happens when you have added another layer on top. The vinegar smell disappears completely in the dryer. A gallon of white vinegar in 1965 cost 23 cents and lasted a family months. A bottle of fabric softener today costs $4 and does a worse job by a measurable standard. The seventh trick was cornstarch on a fresh grease stain on the carpet. Not a spray, not a blotting motion. Cornstarch poured directly onto the wet stain and left alone for 15 minutes. Here is why this worked better than every commercial carpet treatment and still does. Rubbing a grease stain pushes it deeper into the carpet pile while spreading it outward at the same time. Blotting, which every carpet cleaning product instructs you to do, does the same thing more slowly. Absorption pulls the grease straight up and out without moving it laterally. Cornstarch, poured in a layer thick enough to cover the stain completely, absorbed the oil the same way a dry sponge absorbs water, through capillary action, drawing the liquid upward into the starch granules. After 15 minutes, you vacuumed it up. The stain came with it. A box of Argo cornstarch in 1965 cost 22 cents. The leading carpet stain remover spray today costs $7, instructs you to blot firmly and repeatedly, and then frequently requires a second application because the first one spread the stain rather than removing it. Your grandmother poured cornstarch and vacuumed. One step, no second application. The eighth trick was petroleum jelly on the white water ring in the wood table. When a cold glass sat without a coaster and left that pale, cloudy circle in the finish, your grandmother opened the medicine cabinet instead of panicking. A small amount of Vaseline on a cloth, rubbed gently into the ring, covered with a dry cloth overnight. In the morning she wiped it away. The ring was gone. Here is what had caused it, and why the petroleum jelly fixed it. A white ring in wood finish is moisture trapped between the layers of lacquer or shellac, the finish clouds where water has worked into the surface. Petroleum jelly is hydrophobic, meaning it actively repels water. Applied over the clouded area and left under slight pressure overnight, it slowly displaces the trapped moisture and allows the finish to clear as the water escapes from the edges. This is the same principle behind the $100 furniture repair products sold in small bottles at hardware stores today. Most of them contain petroleum-based compounds doing precisely this job with a more expensive label. A jar of Vaseline in 1958 cost 35 cents and lasted years. It fixed water rings in wood, lubricated stuck zippers, prevented rust on cast iron hinges, and soothed chapped lips in January. One jar, 11 jobs. The petroleum jelly did not need 11 different products for 11 different surfaces. That was a product category that got invented later. The ninth trick was chalk in the toolbox. Plain white school chalk, calcium carbonate, placed loosely among the tools prevented rust through winter storage and between uses. Your grandfather kept a handful of chalk stubs in his metal toolbox, the way some men kept rags. His drill bits stayed bright through 3 Ohio winters, while the neighbors turned orange, sitting in the same garage. The calcium carbonate in chalk draws moisture out of the surrounding air and holds it within the mineral structure of the chalk itself, keeping the relative humidity around the metal tools below the threshold where oxidation begins. The chalk eventually becomes saturated. You can dry it in the sun for a few hours and start again. A box of school chalk in 1960 cost 40 cents and contained 48 pieces. A container of silica gel moisture absorbers, the small packets in shoe boxes and electronics packaging, costs $12 at the hardware store if you buy them specifically for tool protection. They work by the same principle. They require replacement when saturated rather than a few hours in the sun. Your grandfather's chalk outlasted 6 sets of those packets and cost 40 cents the one time. The 10th trick was the sock as a dusting tool, and it was better than any commercial duster ever made for a simple reason that commercial dusters cannot acknowledge. It bent. A worn cotton sock pulled over the hand reached into spaces no rigid or semi-rigid duster could reach. Both sides of a window blind slat simultaneously. The inside corner of a bookshelf at the exact angle where dust accumulated. Along the top of the refrigerator, pressed flat, across a ceiling fan blade from above, trapping the dust inside the sock, rather than sending it falling onto the furniture below. When the sock was dirty, your grandmother washed it and put it back in the drawer she kept for this purpose. That sock did 40 jobs before it finally fell apart. A $12 pack of microfiber dusting cloths leaves fibers on dark wood. A $5 feather duster redistributes dust rather than collecting it. The sock, which cost nothing because it was a retired sock, did neither of those things. It was the correct tool, and the only reason it disappeared from the cleaning drawer is that there was no money in selling it. The 11th trick was the open windows. Every morning, before anything else was cleaned or organized, your grandmother opened the windows. Not for fresh air in the inspirational sense people talk about now, for ventilation, for pushing out the carbon dioxide and cooking vapors and overnight humidity that had settled into the house, and replacing them with air that had not been breathed and rebreathed through the night. Modern homes seal significantly more tightly than homes built before 1970. The insulation is better. The windows close with greater precision. The result, as the EPA has consistently measured, is indoor air quality that is frequently worse, sometimes significantly worse, than the outdoor air of American cities. The solutions the market offers are air purifiers, HEPA filters, ionizers, UV sanitizers, and a dozen other categories of devices, ranging from $40 to $400 and requiring regular filter replacement. Your grandmother opened 2 windows for 10 minutes every morning. Cross ventilation, east to west, moved the stale air out and brought in air that simply had not been indoors yet. It cost nothing. It required no maintenance. It worked because the physics of air movement has not changed since 1962. Here is the thing underneath all of it, the thing nobody says directly. The household cleaning industry was worth $300 million in 1950. By 1970, it crossed $1 billion. By 2023, it exceeded $30 billion. That growth did not happen because homes became harder to clean. It happened because someone understood something important about the difference between a clean home and the feeling of a clean home. Strong chemical scents, colors in spray bottles, the satisfying hiss of an aerosol. All of it communicated clean in a way that a bowl of vinegar water and a crumpled newspaper simply did not. They were not selling clean. They were selling the feeling of clean. Those are different products. Your grandmother's house was clean. Her windows were clear. Her floors held up. Her tools did not rust. Her roses bloomed through June. She did all of it for less than $3 a month. And every trick she used is still sitting in your kitchen right now, waiting for you to remember what it was for. Memory Lane, America. One story at a time.